All right, we're going to do a guided close reading of another section from the Fairy Queen. This is from Book 1, also Canto 1. And this is where Red Cross is journeying with Una. And here we are at Fit 13. And they've come through a dark wood and they've arrived at a cave. Here we have Una. Yea, but, quoth she, the peril of this place I better wot than you. That means no. Though now too late to wish you back return with foul disgrace. Yet wisdom warns, whilst foot is in the gate, to stay the step ere forced to retreat. Retreat. So they've come to this cave, and Una's warned that this is not a safe place, and Red Cross is insisting that, oh, we've got to make a trial of it because I'm a knight, and it would be shameful to turn back. So she tells him, this is the Wandering Wood, this Error's den, a monster vile whom God and man does hate. Therefore, I rede, beware. Read in Old English meant advise. Fly, fly, quoth then the fearful dwarf. This is no place for living men. So allegorically, we have Red Cross, who's representing the church. I'm sorry, Red Cross representing England, representing a young Christian, journeying with the church for the one true faith, Una. And they've come to a dangerous place, a wandering wood. And allegorically, this would be a place where a young Christian might find himself moving off the path, tempted by something. Here, he's tempted by his pride into an encounter. And that's the sort of place where one encounters error. And it's monster, literally, on one level, but allegorically, uh, error is something that will ensnare you, confuse you. And of course, the dwarf here says, get out, get away. Allegorically, scholars aren't sure what the dwarf represents. There's lots of discussion about him. Some think he's common sense, others think he's something like conscience, because wherever Red Cross gets himself into these scrapes, the dwarf is there pointing out often obvious things like, look, there's a bunch of bodies here. This is probably not a good place. And here the dwarf is sensible. If Una, knows the peril of the place, if Una's been here and she says, get away, then it's probably good advice. But full of fire and greedy hardiment, the youthful knight could not for aught be stayed. He's got to get. He is greedy, and greedy hardiment meaning um, he's ambitious to show his hardness, to show he's tough, and he's passionate. Forth unto the darksome hole he went, and looked in. His glistering armor made a little glooming light, much like a shade, by which he saw the ugly monster plain, half like a serpent horribly displayed, but the other half did woman's shape retain, most loathsome, filthy, foul, and full of vile disdain. There's an allusion here to the whore of Babylon, which throughout the Fairy Queen, Spenser uses to equate with the Roman Church. But here's this monster. It's a harpy-like thing, uh, and we're going to see shortly that it's meant to represent Rome. So she lay upon the dirty ground, her huge long tail, her den all overspread, yet was in knots, and many bouts upwound, pointed with mortal sting. Kind of horrible. Of her there bred 1,000 young ones, which she daily fed, sucking upon her poisonous dugs, each one of sundry shapes, yet all ill-favoured. Soon as that uncouth light upon them shone, into her mouth they crept, and sudden all were gone. So error in the allegory, error breeds more error. But a single error, like the monster here, the products of it are various and here we have sundry shapes, all ill-favored. They feed upon the original error. So it's the notion of heresy. So if you have a core heresy, that heresy will beget more heresies. Something like when once we begin to treat so let's say we treat Christ as not divine, he's only a man, then that begets other errors like Pelagianism. So if Christ could accomplish great things, he seems powerful, then that must mean that any other man could do the same. Um, Arianism comes from the same, treating Jesus as not divinely, not eternally begotten. So here, error does the same thing: feeds, creates more, and those errors feed upon her and are sheltered by her. Now, this idea that as soon as the uncouth light upon them shone, into her mouth they crept. Two levels of allegory there. First, we have the literal, where this action is happening, and then it's the idea that, spiritually speaking, that whenever light is shown on error, it flees. It can't bear truth. So from John 3, men love darkness because their deeds were evil. Evil doesn't want to be exposed. Error doesn't want to be exposed. And so wherever truth is shown, truth shines on it. It seeks to stay in the darkness. The other layer of the allegory is that the Roman Church shelters its errors. And whenever truth is shown, whenever, say, Protestant rebuttals to its propaganda are challenging it, then they just rush under the protection of Rome, under the idea of papal infallibility, and so those errors are guarded and protected. We continue on. They begin to battle, and Red Cross finds himself here in Fit 18, much daunted with that dint he hits her across the head. Her sense was dazed, yet kindling rage. Herself she gathered round. With all at once her beastly body raised with doubled forces high above the ground, though wrapping up her wreathed stern around, leapt fierce upon his shield, and her huge train all suddenly about his body wound. That hand or foot to stir he strove in vain. God help the man so wrapped in error's endless train. It's a great couplet there at the end. And here is really, this is of this moment, the focus of the allegory is that if a young Christian, if the Protestant church in England engages with error and too rashly, unprepared, then this is what's going to happen. They're going to get bound up, caught, trapped. And Red Cross is basically done here. He's bound. He ignored the true church, and it takes her intervention here. His lady, sad to see his sore constraint, cried out, Now, Sir Knight, show what ye be. Add faith unto your force, and be not faint. This emphasis runs throughout Book 1, where on a number of occasions Una has to remind Red Cross who he is. Show what you be. Remember who you are. Remember how you got here. Remember who called you. It's a call to identity, because what he seems to suggest here is that when a person is wrapped up in error, they forget who they are, and they forget how they got there, and they forget their faith. And so his lady, the one true church, the one faith, reminds him of his faith. Add faith. Remember your faith. Add that to your force. So it's not enough to engage with error according to your abilities, according to your own powers. You have to have faith because that brings to you the power of God. And so her advice, strangle her, else she sure will strangle thee. Go strangle her. Go for the throat. Go for where the problem's coming from. Don't worry about the tail. Don't worry about the presenting issues. Go for the cause. That when he heard, in great perplexity, his gall did grate for grief and high disdain, and knitting all his force, got one hand free, wherewith he gripped her gorge. Nice alliteration here. That alliteration, it draws our attention to the point. He gripped her gorge with so great pain that soon to loose her wicked bands did her constrain. And then comes this great bit 20. Therewith she spewed out of her filthy maw, her mouth, a flood of poison horrible and black, full of great lumps of flesh and gobbets raw, which stunk so violently that it forced him slack his grasping hold. And from her turned him back. Her vomit full of books and papers was. Now that seems odd, with loathly frogs and toads, which eyes did lack, and creeping sought way in the weedy grass. Her filthy parbrake all the place defiled has. So this, her vomit, error produces. And the allegory here is strongly emphasizing the political and ecclesiastical, equating error with Rome. Rome is constantly vomiting books and papers, propaganda, papal bulls, decisions of their councils, trying to lure the Protestant people back into Rome. But it's accompanied with loathly frogs and toads, which eyes did lack. Blind frogs, blind toads. It's a funny image, stumbling away into the grass. Error and its products are blind. That's what it vomits. Error produces more error and blindness and foolishness. Frogs and toads are also kind of like in Disney films. They're also associated with magic. Blind toads. So what we have here, this taken together is an episode, and this episode of the Fairy Queen, Spenser likes to take an idea and then rework it in different iterations. And this encounter of Red Cross, where he comes rashly towards an enemy, he gets himself in bad straits, and he needs Una's intervention. That happens again and again. So look for it, and pay attention to what is emphasized in that combat. And that'll tell you something about the Reformation spirituality and Reformation views of the political situation as well.